Hello and welcome back to the Opposites Abroad podcast, a podcast about all things travel. Charlie Bosco here with my good friend TT down in Denver, and it is episode 13, and it's unlucky for everyone listening because we're talking about me all day. I remember when we first started, you were saying, I want to talk about guiding, and I was thinking, it's probably not that interesting, but we'll find out today. We're talking all things guiding. My first, as I said on the last episode, I'd struggled to use the word career, but my first thing I got paid for was outdoor instructing and guiding. So we're going to talk about what it's like to be a guide, some of the pros, some of the cons, and I think a lot of it will be relevant to people that do city tours or in some way work in the tourism industry and are front-facing towards clients. So although I was guiding in the Himalayas and the Andes and big mountains, I think probably a lot of it's transferable, and hopefully people listening to this who are considering that career or already underway with it might take something from it. At the very least, I'd like to think got some really good stories. So
yeah, that's all I care about. I don't.
Yeah, you don't care about the career advice.
No. And I think, it's good for people to kind of see how maybe not to behave when they're on a tour.
Yeah. Well, just being polite's a good start, but I've definitely got some stories of people that couldn't manage that.
So where was your first guide job, and how'd you get it?
So, we're going back, but I got into, everything's a long story, but to summarize, I got into outdoor sports when I was in high school. It was the first thing I'd ever been good at. I was the most unremarkable small kid, and just kind of realized that actually I maybe had a toughness that other people didn't have. I didn't mind being cold and tired, and I was quite robust in the outdoors, so kind of decided that I wanted to do it as a job. Started out outdoor instructing, so that's taking people rock climbing, and you have to get qualified and stuff. You can't just decide you want to do it. It's like any job, you got to get qualified. Got more and more qualifications, and then I got through a contact, somebody said, there are some people in the Alps and they're looking for a trekking guide. And it was pretty woefully under-experienced and underqualified. But back then, you didn't actually officially need a trekking. It's called the International Mountain Leader, but you didn't need a certification to take people trekking. And it was terrible money. It was €200 a week. Can you imagine?
Wow. And this was when you were in England still? You got this job?
Yeah, I was in England. And I was actually, again, deviating slightly. I was planning to move to New Zealand. I'd lived in New Zealand before, and I was all set to move to New Zealand. And then this job came through, and it was in Chamonix and in France. And if you're into mountain sports, Chamonix is Mecca. There's nowhere like it. No one has ever said the words, this is a bit like Chamonix. It's a completely unique place. It's the ultimate destination for mountain lovers. And so when I got offered this job in Chamonix, although it was €200 a week, it was board and lodging, so you don't pay for anything. And at the time, I thought, $200 a week and everything paid for, and I get to go to Chamonix and go hiking in the Alps. Yeah, I'll take that. So I took that, ended up doing a few seasons for that company, around Chamonix and Zermatt in the Alps, and then in turn that led on to getting my first break, working in the Himalayas. And like any career, it's all about who you know. What you know just is of no value to anyone. It's all about who you know. Everything came from a contact, and they said, Charlie's okay, and you get a break. And obviously the key when you get a break is you've got to deliver. Yeah. But you can get the break through who you know. So ended up getting the trekking job in Chamonix, stayed for 3 years, and then that led on to getting my first Himalayan trip. Is that too long? Not enough?
No. And then, so tell me more about Chamonix.
Well, Chamonix is a very special place.
And it's in Switzerland. It's in Switzerland.
It's in France, but it's right on the border of Switzerland and Italy. So there's actually a peak in Chamonix where you can be. I guess you can't be in all three countries, but you can have your feet in different countries and your arm in a third country. You can be in France, Switzerland and Italy all at once. So it's right on the border. But it's at the foot of Mont Blanc, which is the highest mountain in the Alps. And
I like that. I like their pins.
Yeah, exactly. and it's not really like anywhere on Earth. The terrain is incredibly steep. The rock is very solid, which is not a feature of many big mountain ranges. Most big mountain ranges has terrible rock. It's like cornflakes piled on top of each other, whereas in Chamonix it's solid, which is rare. So the climbing is exceptional, and it's got the most insane lift network. You can get whisked from town to 12,000 feet in about 25 minutes and just be in the heart of the glaciers, which is just...
And how tall is the mountain?
Mont Blanc is it's 4,808 meters, so that's like 15,000 feet and change. But the cable car, the Aiguille du Midi cable car, which is a famous cable car, goes up to about 3,800 meters. So again, trying to do my maths, just over 12,000 feet. But my mum was an armchair mountaineer, so she gave me books about mountaineering, and everyone goes to Chamonix, and it's all tales of when I went to Chamonix and this happened in Chamonix, and so it's kind of it's just the mecca. And I actually remember the first time I ever went, it was hammering rain, couldn't see anything, and I was standing in the town square almost kind of shaking, just thinking, I am in Chamonix, this place I've read about for so many years, this legendary place, and ended up living there for 8 years.
And how long is like when you were a guide in Chamonix, how long was the trip for people?
What? Sorry, which trip?
Like if people were going to hike Chamonix with you, how long did it take them?
Oh, well, yeah. So I mean, we're getting a bit into the weeds, but I wasn't guiding in Chamonix. Ironically, you need a far higher standard of qualification to guide in the Alps than you do in the Himalayas.
So what were you doing in Chamonix?
Well, high mountain guiding, so glaciated mountain guiding, taking people rock climbing, anything involving a rope is
okay.
Yeah, that's very highly regulated in the Alps. In the Himalayas, it's a free-for-all. If you say you're a guide, you're a guide. So just to be clear, I wasn't guiding in Chamonix. That would be illegal. I'd get arrested, and I genuinely wasn't. But so I the trek I did the most was the Tour de Mont Blanc, and that took 2 weeks.
Wow, that's a long time.
Yeah, well, you go right round the Mont Blanc Massif, the range. I mean, it's 2 leisurely weeks. The record for running round, it's about 20 hours or something, which is just disgusting. But yeah, I mean, we took 2 weeks.
And then would you camp, like set up tents, or were there little villages you'd stop at, or?
We were camping. We were normally pretty near a village. There are different ways of doing it. You can stay in hotels, you can stay in mountain huts. It's so, compared to the North America, it's so developed. You could do it in 3 days or 5 days or 12 days, and you could camp or you could hut or you could hotel. There's so many amenities. It's not as wild as the high mountains are wild, but the valleys are so full of amenities and things that it's a really different experience from being in North America. But yeah, so I ended up doing 3 summers. Actually ended up living in Chamonix for 8 years and wrote the guidebook, available at good Amazon.coms everywhere. You get $10 off if you buy a signed copy.
I forgot about that you wrote a guidebook for that.
Yeah, so that was, anyway, and then that was so I started out in the Alps, and then got my break in the Himalayas, which I guess is some more interesting stuff, because trekking around Mont Blanc is great, it's amazing, but it is trekking on well signposted paths, and it's not.
Before we get to Himalayas, I have a couple more Chamonix questions.
Go for it. I'll talk about Chamonix all day. It's a very special place. I always say to people, I grew up in Chamonix. I arrived a boy and left a man.
What made you turn into a man? Tell me about that night.
I don't mean physiologically.
Would you like cook food for people and like use like for dinners and stuff when you were doing it, or?
Well, there was me leading the treks, and then I had this girl who worked alongside me, and she would basically take care of dinners, and then all the clients would mess in and we'd all wash up together. So it was quite fun in that respect. She would cook a 3-course dinner and she'd drive around. So she'd drive from one campsite to the next place, buy food on the way, cook 3-course meal. We'd all wash up together. So it was quite, yeah, that's quite cool. I mean, it wears pretty thin. The first season I did 6 Tour de Mont Blancs back to back. So, I had a half day off every second Saturday. So it wears pretty thin. After 12 weeks, you're not thinking, oh, I can't wait for another campground and another group wash up. But it's quite a fun way to do it, and I enjoyed it.
And so if you're making $200 or €200 or whatever a week, how many people were on the tour?
It was maximum 16, I think. 14. Yeah, 16. I think it was maximum 16. But as I say, it's trekking, so you're on a very well-established path. There are signs everywhere. So you're not guiding as such. You're saying to people,
"Oh, that's right.
Okay,
guiding's illegal."
Yeah, exactly. Well, you're not doing anything with a rope or anything. You're saying to people, okay, we're going to be hiking uphill for an hour, and then when we get to the top, you'll see this view, and if there are any accidents, then obviously I would deal with them. But you're kind of shepherding people. I wouldn't, when there's 16 people, you're not guiding. You're just kind of showing them the way.
And what did they pay?
Do you know what? I don't know if I ever looked it up. It wouldn't be that much. I'm going to say it was a British company. £1,000? I don't know. I actually do £1,000 plus flights, something like that. It wouldn't have been a lot for 2 weeks. But I actually never looked it up. That's terrible, isn't it? I never looked up what any trip I led cost because
when you're young, you're not as curious, I don't think, about profit.
No, and also I finished that season with €2,500, and people were very generous. Normally, you get a tip at the end of the trip, so you probably get another €300. I mean, when you're just a bum, you have no rent, nowhere to live.
Yeah,
€2,500 and $1,500 in cash in an envelope. You feel like you're never going to need to work again. So, yeah, I didn't give money a lot of thought back then.
What did you give a lot of thought?
Doing stuff in the mountains. I also the girl who was
okay.
My support. That became a thing. So that was
what kind of thing?
Like a thing for 18 months.
Oh wow.
Yeah, no, that was good. That was a great time. But it's funny looking back now because we're both. Once you're a grown up, I look back and think, what we the summer ended. I don't know, middle of September.
Yeah.
I had $4,000, I guess, half of it in cash.
Yeah.
And I had zero plan for what I was going to do next. But at the time, it doesn't seem to matter. You think, oh, I've got enough money. I reckon I can make this out for 3 months. I ended up going to Spain for 3 months and just bumming around, doing whatever I wanted. So
yeah.
It feels like a lot of money back then.
Yeah, you make me wish sometimes that I hadn't gone straight from college into like full-time work that I've kind of done ever since, because you've had some of these longer. I've traveled a lot, but I've traveled over vacation time or weekends, and you've done these like long times of living cool places, and it's pretty awesome.
But the downside is now that I'm in the real world, I feel like I'm 10 years behind everyone my age.
Yeah.
In terms of experience and the jobs I can get and what I can apply for. If I apply for a job, I'm normally competing with people who are 10 years younger than me because I basically didn't enter the workforce in a meaningful way till I was 30. So
I think you kind of pick at some point, do you goof off when you're young or goof off when you're old?
Well, I'm aiming to do both, but sadly...
but the middle part's the tough part.
Yeah, and the maths is also proving tricky. The idea that we could ever retire in Canada right now is hard to imagine, but... Yeah, definitely would like to go back to being a bum. It was fun.
Since we don't have visual for the listeners, I am drinking Canadian beer right now to show my support of our 51st state.
Well, it's kind of a welcome gesture, isn't it, to us?
Yes.
We're going to have a lot less healthcare and a lot more guns soon. I can't wait.
Yes, that's exactly right. So, I was a guide one time.
Tell me.
So it was kind of like an interesting thing because there was a kind of a fellowship, I guess you'd call it, of of people, and there's a guy who's kind of a ranger. There's a dwarf.
Where is this
There's
going?
a couple more like slight figure people, and we had this ring that we were trying to get into a volcano, and we had to go through like all kinds of adventures to get this ring into this volcano. And I don't know if I ever told you about it, but
I think you might have mentioned it. I feel like someone made a blockbuster movie about it. Actually, yeah.
yeah, I don't like to brag about it but yeah, it was quite the adventure, and it was. Yeah, it was really difficult at times. There was like giant spiders. And,
I can believe.
Yeah.
Well, as Muhammad Ali said, it's not bragging if you can back it up.
that's true.
So
So
don't need-
okay,
yeah,
enough
sorry,
about
go on.
me. Enough about me. This episode's about you. I don't want to get on.
Well, it's not about me. That sounds
I-
awful. It sounds like it's my turn.
So, the Himalayas.
Yeah, the Himalayas.
So where are the Himalayas? I never heard of them.
I think they're near Russia.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't know. I just got on the plane. No. I mean, as I'm sure many people listening to this know, they span Nepal, India, Bhutan, China, Tibet, Afghanistan, Pakistan. So it's the biggest mountain range on Earth. All the big mountains are there. It's crazy how much bigger the Himalayas are than any other mountain range. The Andes is the longest mountain range on Earth. But in terms of height, the highest mountain in the world that isn't in the Himalayas is 2 kilometers smaller than Everest. I mean, it's the scale of them is so far beyond anything else in the world. So it's a pretty amazing place. I think everyone. I mean, hey, if you don't like mountains or the outdoors, then maybe not. But
Yeah.
if you love nature and natural sights, then to see the Himalayas, it should be on anyone's bucket list.
Yeah, I've actually would have thought before about doing a trip, and going to like Everest Base Camp. We've talked about it before but I think the whole Everest thing's kind of ridiculous. It's not.
It's insane. Yeah, it's insane.
It's pulling up
I-
a rope and walking with a million other people up a mountain.
Yeah, I don't want to go down the road of climbing ethics, but what satisfaction you would ever get out of pulling on a rope while someone carries your bag and
Yeah.
breathing artificial oxygen to
Yeah.
essentially bring the mountain down to your level.
Yeah.
What anyone would get out of that, I don't know. And if saying you've climbed Everest matters enough to you that that's worth it, then well done. But by my definition, you haven't climbed it anyway, and why would you care what people think? But anyway, I digress. The Everest thing is crazy. The one thing I would say about Everest, obviously you meet a lot of people climbing Everest. So I spent loads of time in Kathmandu, which is capital of Nepal, and kind of the launching pad for most, or certainly the south side of Everest. I would say almost everyone I met who was climbing Everest or had just climbed Everest was in some way thinking that doing that would change their life. So they thought, if I climb Everest,
Yeah.
I will in some way be happier. And obviously the brutal truth is, if you're climbing Everest, people said, my marriage is struggling since the kids have left home, or I feel like my kids have never been proud of me, or I feel like I've never achieved anything. And the ruthless truth is that if you stand on top of one mountain, it's not going to save your marriage. It's not going to make your kids respect you anymore. It's not going to make you feel like you've made something of your life. It's not going to answer your problems. And I always felt like because there's so many interesting things to do in the Himalayas, and climbing Everest must be one of the least interesting.
Yeah.
I always felt like most people I spoke to about Everest were in some way looking for something that was completely unrelated to climbing Everest. But maybe that's just my observation, and maybe some people have a great time and get a lot out of it, but it just has turned into a bit of a circus. And I always felt like a lot of people doing it were doing it for reasons other than because they genuinely wanted to and they thought they'd enjoy it, which to me is the only reason you do anything.
Well, I think that you and I've met a lot of people who travel, and people who travel extensively, and I think there's people that travel extensively for the right reasons.
Yeah.
There's also people that travel extensively or do things like climb Everest because they're just incredibly boring people, and it's the only thing that they can think of that makes them interesting.
That's a very brutally honest but probably accurate way to look at it. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
if someone said to me, I've got $50,000 to spend and 2 months available to me in the Himalayas, I could name 50 things you should do that would be a far better experience than climbing Everest. So you've got to judge what you're getting out of Everest. Why are you going to Everest? If it's not to say you did it, why are you going? Because it won't be fun. It probably won't be that satisfying. It probably won't even be a great experience because you'll just be standing in a queue pulling on a rope. So
Yeah.
I the motivation for doing something, if the motivation is to say you've done it, I just don't want to know. That doesn't impress me at all. So,
Yeah.
but I haven't climbed Everest. Maybe if I mean, I know lots of people who have, and the people who were, I think, doing it for the right reasons were pretty uninspired by the whole experience and would never do it again.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And I actually wouldn't mind down the road just doing a whole. Maybe we find someone who, maybe you get one of your buddies that climbed it, and we have them on, and we just do a whole episode on Everest.
I mean, most of the people I know who did it got paid to do it, so they might be eyeing up getting paid to do it again because you can get some decent coin out.
Yeah.
But I can certainly ask around for sure.
Yeah, I think that'd be really interesting because I think there's this thought of people that maybe, and I'm not a climber, but I know you, and I know you're fairly humble, but I think you're pretty well known in that community, and I think it'd be really interesting to people your thoughts on it, because I know we've talked about this Everest thing before a few times, and I could talk to you about it every couple of months because I just think it's fascinating.
But I think it's like any tick, isn't it? If your dream is to go to Tokyo, you can go to Tokyo, and I'm sure it'll be great, but it'll only keep you warm for so long.
Yeah.
And eventually you'll think, well, you're not going to go for the rest of my life, I feel good because I always wanted to go to Tokyo and I went. You're going to think, well, that was pretty cool, but there's actually a load of other stuff I'd like to do. And I think if people climb Everest because they think it's going to in some way change their life, they are going to be disappointed.
Yeah, I think that's very fair. Now, Thomas, tell us about the Himalayas, non-Everest Himalayas.
Well, the Everest region, I should say, is the most spectacular. And if you're going to go to one region, as much as it's busy and it's a cliche and everything else, the Everest region, the Khumbu region of Nepal, is pretty hard to beat. If you want to go to the Himalayas, just go to the famous bit. And seeing Everest, because Everest, much as climbing it has become a circus, it is a special mountain. It's the highest mountain on Earth. I remember the first time I saw it, and you think, oh wow, it really takes your breath away. It's an amazing area. So but there are so many great bits of Nepal. I haven't been to Pakistan. That's probably top of my mountain list to go to Pakistan and see the giants of the Karakoram. But Nepal, northern India, it's all fabulous. But as soon as you get away from Everest and Annapurna, it gets pretty quiet pretty quickly.
Yeah, and we came close to going to Pakistan, last year? But not so much climbing, but we came close to it.
Yeah, and actually, I should probably hit you up again. It's, that idea is not dead. Stay tuned. Stay tuned, listeners, because there's a podcast I'd like to do around something to do with Pakistan, but we'll see if it comes off. But no, it's people say the Pakistan Himalayas are the most beautiful Himalayan mountains. I can't comment. They look pretty nice to me from what I've seen, but never been. But yeah, do we want to get into the pros and cons and of guiding and good experiences and bad experiences?
Yes, we do. So I don't even know where to start. It's such an interesting topic. Where if you were, I think there's two ways to look at it. If you were going to be a guide, where would you recommend people be? And if you were going to go on one of these trips as a tourist, where would you recommend going?
If you're going to be a guide and you want to have a life, you need to live in the European Alps, because you can wake up in your own house, take your kids to school, ride a cable car into the heart of huge glaciated mountains, be a guide all day, and come home. So, if you want to be a guide, you should be in the. If you want your career to be guiding, then the Alps is kind of the obvious place to go. If you want to be a ski guide, Canada's pretty good, for sure, but a lot of the work in Canada is week on, week off. So if you work as a heli guide, a heli ski guide, you probably do week on, week off, which, depending on your personal situation, may or may not suit. And if you want to get into expeditions, I don't want to say you can't have a family, but it's pretty tricky to have any sort of relationship at home if you're going to be doing more than an expedition, maybe 2 per year.
Do you think it's a career just mostly for young people?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, you get paid to see the world and do really cool stuff, and that's pretty great. But you make pretty poor money until if you're really well qualified, you go and live in Chamonix or Zermatt or wherever in the European Alps, you can make decent money. You make a pretty decent living.
Or you start your own company or something like that once you're more experienced. Or...
Well, I mean, even a Chamonix mountain guide, I don't know what the going rate is now, but you could easily be taking home north of €500 a day. So no one's getting rich, but that's a nice living. If you do 120 days a year, you make a decent living. So expeditions aren't particularly well paid unless you end up one of those elite guides. There are some guides who've become the Everest guy and they've got an amazing success rate and they can basically name their price, but not many people are getting rich out of guiding. So and it's very hard on families. So I think it probably is a young man's game unless you go and live in Europe, or you say, I'll do 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off in the Canadian Rockies, something like that.
What percentage of guides are men versus women, do you think?
It's male dominated for sure, less and less so, but I mean, I would say 20-1 men to women.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And
that sounds like one of those parties in Berlin you were talking about.
It sounds like a party in Chamonix. There's a lot of men in Chamonix. There's not a lot of women.
So I definitely don't want to be a guide.
No, I mean, guiding is an amazing life. You get to be outside every day and doing what you love every day. But if you actually start thinking about the reality of how to get into the mountains on a regular basis, you kind of need to live somewhere. You need to live very close to them. You need to be prepared to be away a lot. And as life intervenes in people's lives, that just becomes less and less feasible.
So whenever I meet a celebrity or someone who knows a lot of celebrities, I pretend to ask questions, but really all I care about is what other celebrities are horrible people. And so what I really want to know is what were like the worst people that you ever guided?
I didn't have many terrible experiences, and we talked about this a little bit at the tail end of our last podcast, even though we shouldn't have done. We were supposed to be talking about Texas, but
I was doing it on purpose to get people excited about this podcast.
No, you did a great job. The teaser.
Thank you.
Yeah. Clients make or break the trip. So I had some trips where the group was just great. They gelled. Everyone got on.
I don't care about those.
Easy. Okay, no, but I was about to say, but I also had some where it didn't.
Tell me you've told me before about this horrible woman that was on one of your tours.
Yeah, and you know what?
She's not listening. It's okay.
No. Quick preface. As I said last week, everyone that signs up for a trip like this wants it to be the trip of a lifetime. They're desperate to go. They know they'll probably only go to the Himalayas once. So people turn up excited, wanting to have a good time, wanting it to be amazing. So you're off to a good start because everyone there is optimistic and excited, and that's an easy start. So already people are in the right mind frame for it to be good. But obviously the nature of genuine adventure, and adventure to me means the outcome is unknown. You could lose all your food on the first day and be hungry, or you could die, or you could hurt yourself, or you could get evacuated by a helicopter. There are all these things that
or
could happen.
Yeti attacks. Those
Yeah,
are
of course.
super common.
And I only lost 2 clients to Yetis, but it does happen.
Yeah, yeah. That's like a whole thing in like literature is like Bigfoot erotic literature, where like a hiker gets lost in the woods and finds Bigfoot and crazy things happen. Don't pretend like you don't know about that.
Next time I'm in Denver, I'm going to take a very close look at your bookshelves. The Yeti always knocks twice or something.
Exactly.
No, but people want to be there, so that's a good start. But I did have a woman on a trip once. She was Israeli, and was incredibly demanding. So she just wanted everything to be about her. The first, one of the first weekends, my knowledge of religious rituals is not what it might be, but at one stage she came in and said, I was hanging out in the Sherpa tent, because obviously you have the client tent and then the Sherpas where they cook dinner and the Sherpas hang out. And I used to kind of go and hang out with the Sherpas at night and say, thanks for your work today. I know you went an extra mile. I always used to go and spend time in the Sherpa tent. She came in and she goes, I see we've been using a lot of candles on this trip. I just need 12 every Sunday, I guess it was. So if you could just give me 12 every Sunday so I can do my... God, I'm so revealing how little I know about Judaism here, but do something with them. And I said, well, we don't have 12 spares every week for you to just use. And she went, I've seen how many candles we've got on this trip. I said, yeah, and we're out for 3 weeks. We might need them. I said, we're not going to eat in the dark for the last week because you used all our candles up. And she demanded that if she wanted to walk slower for a day, we should allocate a Sherpa to her so that she could detour into a village that she'd read about. And she just was constantly demanding. Oh, I don't like... I've heard that pass is not as spectacular as the one to the left. And I think we should do the one to the left. I was like, well... And I was saying, well, all our gear's already gone over the one on the right. If we go over the one on the left, you've got to cross a glacier. We don't have any glacier gear.
Why didn't you just say, I think you should go for it. We'll meet you on the other side.
Because it's me that gets sued if she falls in the crevasse.
And how old was she?
I mean, she seemed old then. She's probably 40. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I was only 25, 26. But yeah, and then anyway, at one stage, the pièce de résistance, we got back to Lukla, which people might have heard of. It's the most dangerous airport in the world. The runway is 400 meters long, and it's on the side of a mountain. The planes come in and they slam on the brakes, and you basically screech to a halt, and there's a big mountain in front of you. About, I don't know, every 3 or 4 years a plane goes down, landing at Lukla. Anyway, we got back to Lukla, and for obvious reasons, you can't fly if it's cloudy, because it's the most technical landing of any airstrip in the world, probably. And it was cloudy. And this woman stood up at dinner and goes, well, Charlie, I got a flight to catch tomorrow, so you better find a way out for us. And one of the other clients on the trip, who I really liked and I was so grateful, stood up and said, I can't even remember her name. He said to her, no, I don't think Charlie better do that. I think you better sit the F down. And kind of came to my... came and defended me. Yeah, and anyway, in the end, we would have been stuck in Lukla for a week, but they were flying... I don't quite know how helicopters were landing. It's probably best not to think about it, but they were landing massive Russian transport helicopters and getting people out in groups of 30, and I bribed the key man at Lukla Airport to let us jump the queue, and we got out the next day, but she still missed her international flight. Yeah. And... sent a feedback form saying I was this terrible guy and I'd made her miss her flight and I didn't respect her religious beliefs and I didn't accommodate her pay. So yeah, I got absolutely pasted on the feedback form. But yeah, by very fortunately for me, my boss happened to be in Lukla when we got back, and he met her. And so when the feedback form came through, he just called me and said, I've seen the feedback form, having met her, I'm 100% on your side. to forget all about it, and they blacklisted her from trips, and they wouldn't take any more bookings from her.
Well, that's awesome.
Yeah, so that was good.
Yeah.
But I mean, I suppose the other problem is when people are unrealistic or won't accept that the trip isn't going to happen. So just one quick example, I did a trip in the Rolwaling Valley in Nepal. We were out 28 days, I think, and we crossed a pass and we were below the final peak we wanted to climb. And at dinner, I said to the clients, look, the avalanche conditions are all wrong. We don't want to be on that slope. We can't do the peak. And one of the clients stood up and said, well, I really think we can do it. And we kind of went back and forth. And I mean, ultimately, if I say we're not going, we're not going. But we still had to have an argument. And the Swiss team came for dinner with us that night in our tent. And they went up, and one of them got killed the next day in an avalanche.
Wow.
But clients put you under pressure, or they'll say, well, I've come all this way. And
yeah, of course.
And that can be really tricky, especially when you've been out. By that stage, we've been out 3 weeks.
Yeah.
You've been living side by side with these people for 3 weeks, and that kind of expectation and pressure can be hard, but you just got to stand your ground. And I mean, I always used to think to myself, well, if they really knew what they were doing, they wouldn't need a guide. So kind of by default, I just kind of know I'm better qualified to make this call than you are. But it can still be hard, and he was really, really not happy about it. And even when the Swiss girl got killed the next day, it didn't really register with him that would have been us. So that can be, the expectations can be tricky. I bet on Everest that's a nightmare, telling someone to turn around.
I think it kind of goes back what you're saying about people. It's like they feel like they have to do this thing for life, and I think when you or for their life, and I think when you travel, you have plans, but you roll with the punches when things change, and you still have fun. And it's not like, okay, if I don't do this, then it's like the end of the world, and I'm gonna risk everything. And it's one thing to risk yourself, but when you start risking people that you're paying to guide you, or you're risking other people that are on the tour, that's just really selfish.
Yeah, and it's hard because I've been there, and you think when you've been out for 3 weeks, you think, I can't believe it. We've come all this. I've flown to the other side of the world. I've been cold and eating, lukewarm porridge and dal bat for 3 weeks, and we're not going to do the peak. And people have said things to me like, oh, I feel like when I get home, people are going to view me as a failure. And it's only once I've failed an awful lot more than I've succeeded when I've tried to do stuff in the mountains.
Yeah.
It's only when you've failed a load of times that you think, oh, actually, it just doesn't matter at all. Nobody at home cares. They'll just go, how was the trip? Oh, we couldn't make the summit. Avalanche conditions are wrong. They go, okay, never mind. No one cares.
Yeah.
But it's very hard to have that perspective when you're quite new to it, or if it's a trip of a lifetime and you've saved up and you waited till you're retired and you went and did that big trip, and then you can't do what you went to do. But yeah, that's just how it goes. I mean, I had a less than 50% success rate trying to climb meaningfully big routes in Chamonix.
Yeah.
And some people have a 90% success rate, but a lot of those people aren't around anymore. So you just got to decide what's worth it. So yeah, I didn't have. I mean, I suppose the other bad experience is we climbed a peak in northern India, and it was kind of a domed peak, and the weather came in. Not badly, but it just clouded over.
Yeah. And
I just could not tell which way we'd come from. And stupidly hadn't marked it on a GPS or taken a compass bearer. We walked up in perfect blue sky, and we're sitting on the summit going, there. So that's China, and that must be this peak, and that must be that, but blah, blah, blah. And then the weather came in. And yeah.
Did you ever leave like breadcrumbs? Like
I should have done.
Like Hansel and Gretel?
I definitely should have done. Luckily, I just had a feeling, just something in me told me which way it was, and then I suddenly glimpsed a cache of gear that we'd left, but that could have got pretty nasty. I also had a few rescues. Obviously, you get clients who are ill prepared, or often we would run into groups who were far less equipped and prepared than our groups, and we had a few quite sketchy rescues where not the best pilots in the world are trying to put helicopters onto not the best landing spots at 5,000 meters, and you kind of wonder if your days are going to end when you get hit with a tail rotor. But
and did you ever have a Saint Bernard with like rum on like his like
Do you know-
a barrel around his neck, and
Do you know what? They actually exist.
Isn't that cool?
Yeah. When you trek in the Alps, some of the herds of sheep have a Saint Bernard guarding them.
Do they have things with like? Is it rum? I don't even know what's in that. What's in that barrel?
I'm not. It could be schnapps. I'm not sure. I mean,
that sounds
yeah.
more likely. Rum's more like Jamaican, I think.
You do not want to go near them. I used to say to the clients, if you see a big dog near some sheep, do not go near it. They are hyper aggressive.
Yeah,
To anyone that goes near the sheep. So
I'm really not into going near sheep. I know that's like I know some people really enjoy that, but that's really not my thing.
No, well, yeah. If you ever find yourself there, don't go and pet the Saint Bernard dog, because they're there to defend the sheep, and they take it pretty seriously. If you get within 100 meters of them, they start losing their minds.
Yeah.
So yeah, don't get involved.
Yeah, I will. I'll control my myself around those sheep.
But I mean, having listed the bad things, there are an awful lot of great things about guiding. So, it can be a great career. I know people who pursued it and followed it fully as a career. In the end, for me, my body just wouldn't hold up. It's a long story, but wear and tear injuries. It's a very physical way to make a living. But being out in the mountains every day, interacting with the local people, that was always one of the best parts, was getting to spend 3 weeks with this group of Nepalese or Indian or Bolivian or whatever people. That
sounds way more interesting than some wealthy person paying to go on some long hike to brag about it.
Yeah, but also you're giving people experiences they couldn't have otherwise had, and that's incredibly rewarding. When you get on the summit and someone is kind of has tears rolling down their cheek because they've worked for 30 years and their retirement trip was to go to the Himalayas, and you got them up a peak and you're looking at the sunrise over Everest, that's pretty special. So and it's a great job, but it's just where your perception of how long you can do it for when you're 23 is quite different from when you're 33. So a lot of people, including me, kind of move away from it, but I do miss it.
Yeah, time is crazy like that for sure.
Yeah, and your perspective changes. So I'm super glad I did it. I thought I'd do it forever.
Really?
Yeah. I don't know. Yeah, 100% thought that was it.
And what made you decide not to?
It gets harder when you've got someone to miss. There's that. Because
I know, and you and I are in different countries, and I know that was tough for you.
We're doing the long distance thing. I think I mean, for me, it was mainly my body. I was just suffering too much. But particularly the expedition life, or as I say, if you're a heli ski guide out here, 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off, if you've got someone to miss at home, it's probably not quite as fun as it sounds.
Yeah.
So I think, but I knew someone hadn't gone home or hadn't had a home for 15 years. This was 10 years ago, and he's still doing it. He just went from expedition to expedition to expedition, and he'd been at it 15 years, and no fixed abode, now 25 years. So,
well, good for him. If and that's something that I've realized over the years, that if something brings someone joy, just because it's not something I would enjoy, I would like, or I would enjoy, good for them. And I'm not the type of person that could go 25 years without having a home, but if that makes somebody happy, good for him.
Oh, absolutely. But I think it's like so many things in life, which is you either really make it work for you or you get stuck. And I suspect he was more stuck than make it work for him. Was he really happy? I suspect not. But you get to, I don't know, 50, and all you've ever done is lead trekking trips, and you've got no relationships, and all your family are in a country that you only go to once every 5 years. It's pretty hard to go and build a life somewhere.
Well, and probably not a lot of savings, because it doesn't pay a ton. And then you get to an age where you physically can't do it, and then what do you do?
Yeah, and that's the thing. So if you want to be a guide, go and live in the Alps, get fully qualified, make decent money, get the off seasons off, and you can have a career out of it. But it's a hard career. And when I started, I probably didn't appreciate it was hard. I just thought, well, I'm already guiding the Himalayas. I just this is just what I'll do. But then, as I say, you start to miss someone. Your back starts to ache at the end of a long day, and you think, really? Am I going to do this? So
now, tell us about. I know you've told me about it, but tell us about the book you wrote.
Yeah, I wrote a climbing guidebook to Chamonix.
Go on.
It's through a company called RockFax, rockfax.com. And if you go to rockfax.com, you can buy a copy. And
what's it called?
It's called Chamonix. Best climbs. It's basically the highlighted best climbs in Chamonix. It's 400 and... God, the second edition came out, and I wasn't nearly as involved with the second edition. It's 480 pages. Mine was 456 pages. I think there's been 30 added, something like that. So it's a pretty big book. You can also get it on an app. That was a pretty rewarding process. But annoyingly, we wrote it just before drones got really good.
Yeah.
So the aerial photos, we had to hire a helicopter. Which was fun, but ate into the profit margin somewhat. So if I did it now, I'd have just used a drone and saved a fortune. But
just Google image it.
Yeah, exactly. But it was a really, really rewarding process. It's kind of my leaving present to Chamonix. I left just as it came out. So yeah, very, very rewarding thing to do. It was a long time ago though. First edition came out 9 years ago. It's pretty crazy to think about.
That's impressive. I mean, how many people have written a guidebook, a published guidebook?
I don't know, really. It's just a case of banging my head against the wall long enough till I'd written it.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was. Glad I did it, for sure.
What's your next book going to be?
Probably Lessons Learned from the Opposites Abroad podcast. Adventures with TT. We can only take a picture of you from the neck down, so that your true identity is never revealed.
Yeah, from my nose, I guess upper lip down.
Oh yeah, you go upper lip sometimes, don't you?
Yeah. I tease a little bit.
Yeah. You're like like those guys in the special forces that have the slot across the eyes.
Yes, exactly like those guys.
When me and you have been out for beers and you're wearing the slot across your eyes, it's a little bit off-putting, but no, it's anyway, feels a long time ago, but it was. I'm flattered that you wanted to hear about it. I hope it's interesting to someone else. I know you're interested in it, but I'm not.
The guiding,
we'll see.
Or the book?
Yeah, the guiding.
Yeah,
it's just a different. It's a different thing, but life is very rich and it's very varied. And at the time, when you're completely obsessed with something, you think that that's the most interesting thing you could do, and that's all you want to do. But as you get older, you think, climbing mountains is cool, but there's a lot of other cool stuff in life.
Yeah,
I think that's probably just a realization I've had.
So
still pretty keen to climb some mountains.
So to end, what's your favorite erotic Bigfoot book?
That's a good one, actually. It's a really good one.
That maybe could be your next book. You could do it in Chamonix. Are there Bigfoots in Chamonix?
Yeah, I think so. There's a few big egos.
Are they?
Does that count?
Are the Bigfoots looking for someone that got lost in the woods and want to get busy?
Yeah, but Bigfoot finds a girl in the wilderness is probably my favorite of all the Bigfoot stories.
Yeah, that's a.
It gets racy towards the end, man. Full on. But no. Anyway, it's been too long since I went to Chamonix. I'm looking forward to going back before too long. Maybe me and you can go sometime.
I have never been.
Somebody said it's like living in an IMAX theatre, and that's about right. Everything's massive. The people are extreme. Everything and everyone there is full on. It's just a really intense place to be.
Yeah, the closest I've been to Mont Blanc is my Mont Blanc briefcase I take to work.
You've been to the Alps, though, hey?
Yeah, I guess when I was a kid, and I went to Switzerland.
Well, I know you've been to Vienna recently, and the kind of official officially the Alps go from Monaco to Vienna, albeit
Really? I've been to Monaco too.
Yeah, they pretty much peter out by, well, they certainly peter out by Monaco because you hit the sea,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
by Vienna, I feel like Vienna's the honorary end of the Alps. The reality
Yeah.
is the end.
I
the end
love
that 100k back.
I love Vienna, by the way.
A little
It's
lukewarm.
so much history there.
Well, we'll do a podcast soon where you convince me it's great.
Okay. Yeah, there's a ton of history there.
All right. Well, I think next week we'll
Not a
get
lot
back...
of sheep, so.
Or St. Bernard's, yeah.
It's funny you say St. Bernard's. Because I would say
Saint Bernard.
St. Bernard. Yeah.
Yeah, but a lot of your pronunciations stress me out. I mean, when you say affluent, it
What do you
just
say?
hurts.
Affluent?
Yeah, but you say affluent, which to me,
What do you say? Affluent?
I say affluent. Yeah,
Do you say potato or potato?
I say tomato. You
Tomato?
say tomato. Tomato. Yeah.
I say aluminium. Do you say aluminum?
To be fair to Americans, you actually spell it differently. So
Oh, we do.
I'll let you off aluminum. You don't have the crucial third eye. Thinking about it. But no, I think next week we'll get back to our speciality of debriefing travel destinations rather than just talking about my old career. But anyway, I really enjoyed it. I hope it was of interest.
Yeah,
to other
I
people.
thought it was
We
super
can-
interesting. So thank you for
And
sharing.
we didn't even stray onto the good epic stories, where the wheels come off big time. I didn't really have many of them guiding, but in my own personal career, climbing career, that's a pretty solid. We call them epics. So
Well, we can do another episode on epic climbs because I know we joke around and stuff, but I know you know some very serious climbers that haven't survived in some real tragedies, and I think that would be interesting for people to.
yeah, and I think just we keep trying to wrap up this episode, but just with the guiding thing, when someone you really care about gets killed, that's when you really begin to think, do I really want to do this enough? So yeah, that definitely affects your mentality as well. But yeah, we haven't strayed onto that. I don't think that's really a travel podcast topic. I mean, all of them just involve me being cold for prolonged periods. I'm generally hungry as well, so they're not actually very good stories. They're not very good podcast stories. If you imagine someone being cold and hungry for a prolonged period, that would basically be every story I've got.
Yeah, I don't like either one of those things. I like sitting in the bathtub and eating food.
So do I. I mean, you never go out planning to be cold and hungry. So
Yeah,
sometimes,
that's way better.
yeah, the wheels come off sometimes. But yeah, but no. Next week we'll get back to our hopefully people think it's our strong suit of debriefing travel destinations. But it was fun.
It was fun. Thank you.
All right, speak next week.
Okay, bye.